So, my friend, I want to ask you, have you been listening to some of my podcasts for a while and identified for yourself all the areas that you feel your business could be better in? Maybe you just are so busy you haven't yet mastered the working as much as you like bit. Or maybe you're just not bringing in the money, like you're struggling with the income, or it's just not enough. Well, it's time for us to have a conversation. In the show notes, there is a link to my evolution call. If you're a dance boss and you are ready to take action, let's have a chat and let's see where I can take you. Welcome, lovelies, to the Ultimate Dance Business Podcast. My name is Deborah Laws, the dance business expert. My passion is to help you turn your passion into profit while guiding you to work less and earn more. I'm super excited to share interviews with you that I know will inspire and motivate you in your schools, as well as my solo shows where I shall be sharing some great tips and strategies. So if you love the show, please do remember to review, subscribe, and share it with your fellow dance boss friends. So let's get stuck into the business of dance. Hey gang, how are you? I hope you are all really well. And thank you for coming in and listening to this podcast. I thought I would talk about something today that I haven't actually spoken about before, which is the kind of the pros and cons around owning or leasing your own premises versus hiring other potential venues. And I know that this is more of a UK thing than potentially it is for our USA or Canadian or Australian dance studios, because I know that you don't all have your own premises, but there's a much bigger majority of you that do. And in fact, one of my lovely coaches, Heather Bulow, is a Canadian dance studio owner. And she was telling me that she thought about 75% of dance studios in Canada operate from their own premises. And I think that is vastly different here in the UK. I would be surprised if ours was even 50%. So, there are a lot of pros and cons. There's a lot of reasons why that is the case, by the way. And I think real estate is priced very differently. We're a small island with a lot of people. So, premises are short and therefore prices are high. So there's reasons why premises are expensive and why there's a lot of dance studios that simply rent church halls, community centers, that kind of thing. But I just thought it would be really great to talk about pros and cons today, if this is something that you are potentially thinking about doing one day. So at one stage, I ran 5 different branches of my dance school spread across 3 counties in the Southwest. And we had, in some of our towns, we had our own premises. In others, we rented premises. So I think at one time, every month, I used to pay 18 different venues spread across all of my schools. So I feel like there isn't a single type of rentable space out there that I haven't rented. As I said, as well as having my own studios as well. So I've got a fair bit of experience in this area. So I think when we start our schools, obviously, initially, most of us go into rented premises. And within a few years, we build the school, we build the numbers, we need to expand our timetable, we need more hours. And, it might be that the premises that we're in doesn't have any more hours. So then we look at renting a different premises somewhere. It's got to be fairly close. It's got to be in the same town. We've got certain criteria, haven't we, that we need. We don't want concrete floors, don't want carpeted floors, got to have parking. Like, there are some real basic needs that are necessary for us. And it becomes difficult, becomes tricky. And some of the venues that I hired were wonderful. I had fabulous relationships with the booking secretary, the caretaker, the church warden, like whoever it was that took care of me and my needs. I had some really, really great ones. And some of them, really looked after me, and I really looked after them and used them for years, decades, in fact. Um, but then there were the experiences where it wasn't always like that, where maybe, somebody wasn't very, how do I put this nicely? Accommodating. Maybe there were people within the rest of the building or other hirers that just created challenges for you. Like I remember running dance classes and having elderly people walk straight through my studio, through my class to get to the kitchen, which was behind me in the studio to make themselves a cup of tea. And I'm not talking discreetly walked around the side and said, I'm so sorry, would you mind if I got to the kitchen? I'm talking about walked literally down the middle of the room in the middle of the kids' dance. And, I had great fun trying to tackle that problem. And things like, you booked a room to start a class at 9 o'clock in the morning and the caretaker arrives at 20 past 9 and can't see why you're so agitated and why parents are cross and all those kind of things, and don't realize that you now have to run your whole entire 7-hour day 20 minutes late because of this. Like I've had it all. I've had it all, from grumpy, miserable caretakers to booking secretaries that didn't respect my business, to leaky roofs, to being blamed for the ice in the car park. Could literally write a book, and I'm sure you guys could too. And so when we're faced with all these challenges, and some of you have little ones, some of you have had horrific ones, it just makes us kind of think, doesn't it? Gosh, if only I had my own premises. If only I could have the room on any day and at any time when I wanted it and when I needed it. Just being able to put the classes and create my timetable as I would love to have my timetable, because the space is mine, just feels like an absolute dream. And so very quickly it kind of becomes of course, everything I'm doing is for the ultimate goal of getting my own premises. And I say my own premises because actually most of the time it's not our own premises. I mean, we're actually talking here more about having like a long-term lease for the majority. I think, I said that at the most it's probably 50% have premises, 50% are hiring venues. But out of that 50%, I reckon there might only be 5 or 10%. And this is all guesswork, by the way, but this isn't stacked with any actual statistics, just Deborah's head. Maybe 10% are actually owned by the principal as opposed to on a long-term lease. But it's not easy being able to actually buy your own premises. I mean, of course, that is the holy grail, being able to have an asset that you own in 20 years or 30 years or 15 years or whatever that is, to actually have bricks and mortar that you own so that you have something to sell is the absolute dream. But that's so hard. You've got to have a big deposit, which for something like a building for a dance studio is going to be in the tens of thousands. You've got to have the money to go to kit out. You've got to be able to pay the mortgage. And it's not a normal mortgage, of course, it's going to be a commercial mortgage. So it's quite rare, I think, in the UK for people to own their own premises. But if that's ever an option, and if you ever have a choice and you can make it work, please go down that route. But from the majority of people that get their own studios, it's a long-term lease. That's what I had. I had a 17-year lease. So some of the things I talked about at the beginning are the reasons why we then start to look to getting our own premises. And if you've had your school for some time, the chances are you've built quite a big timetable. Maybe you've got quite a lot of students, and maybe you've got some fairly decent profit. Or even if you don't have a huge amount of profit, the money that you're spending on rent has stacked up considerably to the extent that actually that would pay probably for my mortgage and my bills if I had my own premises. So we start to have a little look, and we have a little look around. And I think the biggest and hardest thing initially is finding someone. Because, of course, we have this wonderful, tick list of things that we want and we need. And that is super hard to find. I know people that have spent 10 years looking for premises, if not longer. And that very much depends on your location and where you are. Parents generally aren't going to be very happy if they have to travel more than 20 minutes to a new location. Chances are going to lose a big chunk of them. And of course, we can't go into a new premises having lost half of our income, half of our students. So finding it in the right location, it needs to have parking. And I'm not talking 2 or 3 spaces. I'm talking a decent amount of parking or off-road parking nearby so that it is accessible. It is convenient for parents. Parents can park when they drop off and they can park when they pick up. It's not a nightmare. It's not a hassle. As an examiner, when I used to examine, I went to many, many, many dance schools around the UK. And honestly, some of them, the nearest car park was like a 10-minute walk. And on a wet, cold, winter's rainy, wet, windy day, you do not want to be parking, finding money for the meter, getting 3 kids out of the car, 2 in a pushchair, 1 that's miserable and grumpy after school, and drag them halfway across town to be able to walk in the studio doors. Like, it just doesn't work. And you will have so many people that won't come for that reason. It's just not convenient enough. So parking is huge. It needs to be in a safe environment. It needs to be somewhere where people can drop their kids off late at night and pick up late at night and be safe. You probably don't want it in an area where the people immediately surrounding it aren't your ideal clients. So if you know that a fabulous building has become available, but it's in the middle of an area that's just not that great, and there's not many people in the area that are likely to be able to send their kids to these lovely extra activities, then are we really going to be able to fill that premises with students, or are we going to struggle to get people to come to that area? It's got to be the right size. Is 1 CO enough? You're going to end up outgrowing it within 5 years. Is there space for you to comfortably move in now and have additional space so that your timetable can expand and you could potentially live in this space? This could be your forever space. And we also need to think about the cost of doing it up. Like, what is it going to cost you to knock all those walls down and put up new walls? What is it going to cost you to put sprung floors in, to lift the ceiling, to, I'm not talking just paint and bars and mirrors that you can fundraise for. I'm talking about properly being able to kit out a safe space that is suitable for the activities that we want to hold. Is there a lovely waiting area? Is there plenty of changing room space? It's big enough for you to have multiple changing rooms. Have you got a staff room? Have you got offices? Is there space for you to store your costumes? Like, sometimes we're so desperate to have our own premises that we will just go, yeah, do you know what? That's better than what we've got now. Let's just go for that. But then it's not actually fit for purpose 6 months down the line when you realize there's nowhere for parents to wait. There's nowhere for anyone to change. You can't sell your uniform. There's only 1 studio. Now it's maxed out. You've got nowhere for the rest of your classes. I do think it's got to be the right space at the right price that you can afford to then refurbish and make into a dance studio. And of course, we need to know what the costs are. We need to know what it's going to cost us to run this, not to kit it out initially, not to find the deposits, but to actually run the business. And we tend to go, oh, do you know what? I can't spend £2,000 a month on rent, and this mortgage is only £2,000. So I can just move into this and have all this space and it can be mine. You're going to have business rates. You're going to have water rates. You're going to have electricity. You're going to have alarms. You're going to have things like, having to get all your electrical equipment pat tested, all your fire certificates, fire and safety certificates. You're going to need, to have other running costs. For example, if you're going to staff it, are you having someone on reception? Are you going to need a cleaner? Like, we've really got to look into all of the expenses that you might not think about initially, or that you think, oh, that won't be too much, and you just kind of cast on the side. They all add up. You know, we used to have to pay for our bins to be taken away, and the cost for the local authority to remove our commercial bins, because it was a commercial property, was extortionate. We ended up changing the way that we collected our rubbish and recycled to try and keep the cost down, because if we filled more than one bin, it was a crazy amount of money. I am just going to pause here for a second because I just want to check that you know all about my new software, Dance Business Solutions. And if you don't, then I would love to show it to you. You can book a demo where I will show you around the magic that I have created in Dance Business Solutions, and you can see just what it will do for your business. So from websites to selling events to managing your customers, managing your inquiries, creating surveys, planning your social media, like it does a gazillion things. And they're all very exciting because I have pre-built most of it for you already using my wisdom and expertise as a dance business coach. So go to dancebusinesssolutions.com as soon as you've finished listening to my podcast and click on book a demo. And I cannot wait for one of my team to show you around. Things like paper towels, or if you're having normal towels, like washing the towels, it's all going to add up. And we've got to really look at all of those costs very sensibly before we go down this route. Now, are you still with me? Are you still kind of hopefully still feeling positive? Some of the benefits. We talked about having a space that's your own, that you can create your own timetable in, and you don't have to worry about it clashing with brownies coming in at 7:00 and all those things. We also don't need to worry about, whether it's going to be clean or not when we walk in. I remember one of the venues I used was a play group during the day, and every morning they had the sand pit out. And whilst they say they cleaned up, every day that I arrived at 3:00, I would have to go around and sweep up and sometimes even mop the floor so that it was suitable for my students to roll around all over the floor. That was an ongoing battle all in itself. So, you know that you can keep the place clean. You know you're not going to get people walking through your studio for a cup of tea. There's all those wonderful things. But also you're going to be able to have your own signage, permanent signage, which means that anybody that's going past your studio, and of course it depends on the location in terms of how much footfall you're going to have, but that's instant permanent marketing that you generally can't have when you hire a facility. And we used to have big signage outside of our studios, but then we also had one of those big glass lockable notice boards that sat on the outside of the building where we could have our timetables, how you could contact us. Nowadays, I'd have QR codes in there. So if people couldn't actually get into the building and access it to ask for information and to inquire, they can have everything they want on the outside of the building. Potentially, you might have space for a shop, or at least an area where you can sell uniform. We had our own self-contained shop within our premises, and that was open to the general public, not just to our students. So we stocked uniform for all the different examination boards, and we collaborated with the other dance schools in the local area so that we stocked the type of, tapestry that they wanted, or the type of unitards that they would supply for their kids. That was a little bit tricky because obviously some principals were a bit wary of sending kids to us because they had to come into the building of the dance school in order to access the shop. And I mean, yeah, it's only natural that they would be concerned that students might decide to change schools. We never, ever, ever mentioned our dance school because it's important to us that people could come into our shop and not feel that they were going to get poached. But naturally, potentially, that was a possibility. So we struggled to get people to come in from outside of our own clientele base, but we did get some. So, maybe you can have the dream of owning a dance shop. At one stage we didn't have a big enough waiting area to do a cafe, but I've been to lots of dance schools when I was examining where they had their own cafes, their own play areas for little ones. It really depends on the size that you've got. But I think the main thing is that when it's yours, you can really make it a home. Like the whole of the inside can be your colors, your branding, your feel, your atmosphere. I'd love to see some beautiful photos on the wall that depict your school values and what you stand for, a past students wall, a wall for what your kids are currently doing and working on. Maybe you have Star of the Week and that goes up. Maybe there's information on your teaching faculty. It's just super nice to be able to have your space and call it home. And there's so many different things you can do, painting parties and getting kids involved in, I don't know, naming the cafe or, trying to make it a really collaborative community that everybody feels a little bit of ownership over, so that you have that lovely respect. There is that, sense of pride when people walk into your studios. You can really create that when it's your own space. It's very difficult to do that when you hire a venue, isn't it? So multiple reasons why you would. Some of the reasons why you wouldn't, potentially, it could end up costing a lot more than you think, and it may end up sucking all the profit out of your business. I very often end up working with clients that say, Deborah, we got our own premises a couple of years ago, and that has soaked up every ounce of profit that we were making. And now we're not earning any money. And yet we've now got a big studio, a big responsibility, a lease that we can't get out of, and we haven't paid ourselves in months. So it can drain all your profits. So my advice is always work out the sums, make sure you can afford it, but make sure you can afford it based on the fact that you can still take a wage. Like, I would really not advise that you go down the route of having your own studio if it means cutting your wage right back to nothing. Because what happens then if if something goes wrong and you need to replace the front door, or you have a break-in, or or there's a flood and you have to replace all the carpets in the foyer? Like, if you've got no spare cash because all your money, including your own wage, is spent currently on just the general day-to-day outgoings, then that can get you into a little bit of tricky water if we're not careful. Another thing that happened to me, and I'm very happy to talk very openly and transparently about my own experiences. They weren't always good. They weren't always clever. Made lots of mistakes in business. And at one point, we were in the middle of a recession. I'd taken my eye off the ball. I was struggling through a divorce. I had a young child under the age of 2. And, life was pretty tough. And the school got itself up to a stage where we weren't earning enough to cover all the costs that were incurred by having our own premises. And so I was really lucky, because our beautiful premises that we had, and we had for many, many years, it was also an ISD exam center. And it was where all the ISD regional courses were held. Like, it was really well-known studios in the Southwest. And I was really lucky because the person who owned the building was actually my old dance teacher. And it was her dance school that I took over in this building as one of the 5 branches that I had. And they were a little bit like my kind of dance parents, my old dance principal and her boss. And in fact, I taught for this school for many years after I graduated from Lane Theatre Arts. And I literally just went to them and said, look, I know I've still got a few years left on my lease. I'm struggling. I can't afford the lease anymore. Would you let me out of the lease early? And they were very kind and said, we will put it to market. And if somebody comes along that wants it now, we'll let you exit the lease. I think I had another 3 years maybe to go on it. And that's exactly what happened. Somebody did want it and came along. And within a term, we were able to exit the lease, which normally we would have had to have stayed in for another 3 years. And I was incredibly lucky, because at the exact same time, and it was this that really triggered the conversation to hand my lease back. One of the local secondary schools had got lottery funding to build a £2.5 million new sports centre onto the side of the secondary school. And this also included a huge 60-foot dance studio that had maple sprung floors, floor to ceiling mirrors all down one side, a highly modern tech system, soundproofing, high ceilings, ballet bars, state-of-the-art, beautiful new changing rooms, and big reception area. And they contacted me and said, it's opening in about 3 months' time. Are you interested in hiring it? And I was like, oh yes, I am so interested in hiring it. And I remember the day we held our first class, I took so many pictures and I was like, I literally cannot believe this is our new home, because there is nowhere in the whole of the Southwest that is anything like this. And we had people that used to use it for holding dance auditions, for we had professional companies come down and use it. Like, it was the most stunning state-of-the-art huge dance studio. In fact, there was another one right next door. So we could hold associate sessions, we could run multiple exams. I mean, it was just absolute dream. And it landed right in my lap. It was 2 miles, literally barely the other side of the town that I was in. It was incredibly affordable per hour. We said, look, we'll have it 4 nights a week. We'll do it for all these hours. We got exclusive use as a dance school. Absolute dream. And so for me to be able to give my studio back was very sad. We obviously had to lose our shop. But at that stage in time, when the economy was really bad, I was having a hard time, and maybe he took my eye off the ball with the business. The studio felt literally like it was weighing me down. It was really quite stressful, having the responsibilities to pay all these bills. So to be able to get away from my own premises and go, do you know what? I'm just paying an hourly rate for what I'm having. I don't have any other responsibilities. And if that class doesn't work, or if I have to close that night down, then I just pay less hours and it still all works. Like, that to me was a lifeline at that stage. Whereas if I'd not been able to get out of my lease, if I'd just got a new premises that I'd spent a fortune doing, you really are in it for the long term. I was very lucky that the premises I had was already a dance studio. They'd already refurbed it. It was where I used to work. It had been done, just 20 years earlier. I didn't need to spend a penny on it. But for some people, they're investing £20,000 just kitting it out so that they can open their doors. That's not something that you can walk away from, even if you had a breakout clause in your contract. So for me, I've owned the studio. I've left the studio. I've hired every type of venue possible. There are pros and there are cons on both sides. It's very individual circumstances, what the building is that you find, what the costs are, how big your stall is, how much profit you have in your stall. It's all got to stack up. And I guess the main thing I would say is just do your due diligence, do your homework, do your research, survey your parents. Would you be prepared to travel this far or this far? Find out who else is in the local vicinity. I'm a massive advocate for integrity and not stepping on other people's toes. Even if the perfect building comes up, please don't go in if it's right next door to another competing business. Really consider. Try not to, which is so easy, and I understand, get carried away by the desperate need to try and fix the problem that you may have with some of your venues, because potentially you could just be stepping into even more problems. But likewise, it could be the best thing you've ever done. So I think it's just consideration, plenty of research, plenty of number crunching. And I'm going to say this, aren't I? I mean, you knew this was coming. Get yourself a business coach that understands your industry. Oh, where might you find one of those? Message me if you need to run stuff by me. If you have just got your premises and now you're stuck in that, oh my gosh, I'm not earning any money, and you've got to get more kids in the door and earn more money. Invest in someone that can help you, because you don't want to end up like me in a stage where you couldn't afford your premises anymore. You couldn't afford to pay yourself. You couldn't afford to even pay all the bills. We don't want you in that stage. We want you to, if you decide that this is where you're going to go and have your own premises, I would really love for it to be a huge success. I want it to be the best decision you ever made. I want it to be the making of your business. And I want it to be your home for many, many years, to a really thriving business that can support you for eternity. I didn't give you necessarily answers that you might have been looking for, but I think I've talked today about all the things to consider. And if nothing else, I've talked about my experiences. I hope that's helped a little bit. And I'd love to know your thoughts. So if you're watching on YouTube, please pop some comments below. What do you think? What have you done? What's worked? What's not worked? Was it the best or the worst thing that you've ever done? And if you listen to this and you've seen a little post come up in my social media channels, do drop a comment. I've just listened to this podcast and, my thoughts are, or I did this and it's been the best thing. Like, I'd love you to communicate with me what you thought about today's chat. All right, my darling, thank you for listening. And I will look forward to hearing you on the next episode of the Ultimate Dance Business Podcast.
So I wanted to tell you that this episode is kindly sponsored by Sally at Dance Studio Marketing, who is your go-to solution for growing your dance school through the power of social media. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at trying to attract new students, at Dance Studio Marketing, Sally helps dance studio owners just like you to leverage the power of social media and paid ads to bring in a steady stream of students, which of course helps you to achieve more balance in your life. So if you're ready to grow with less stress, visit sallyprendergast.com, or you can connect with Sally at Dance Studio Marketing on your favorite social media platform today. My clients are getting fabulous results using Sally. So let's get those ads going and let's get your school growing.